Now another button. The button says print, and what we're going to do with that print is actually print it to an HTML file. So that HTML can either be uploaded to a website or printed straight from a browser. And button's action is here. And what happens is, it's actually here. What happens is, first we get a file list from the user. Let me sort that file list. Sort, request the file from the user. And then we create a new thing called HTML. What that HTML is a little string here. We're copying this so that we get a new fresh bit of HTML. If this program is run a couple times, we could have an old block or an old piece of text. We want to use the copy command to make sure it's new, and that it only contains this little bit of HTML code. And then next we go through using a for each loop. We go through that file list. For each file, we're using the variable file to represent each of those files. We're going to append to that HTML text this text. And again, it's a bit of HTML code. And then to local file, we'll convert it to the local file system. The way that local operating system deals with file paths, and then the current file name. So we can select a bunch of files, loop through them, and append each of those files to this code and end it with some HTML. We're basically adding an image to this HTML code. And then when that's all done, we append it to that HTML text, the closing HTML body and HTML tags. And now we've got a bit of HTML stored in this variable HTML. And what we're going to do is write that to this file called chords.html. Just make sure that HTML code up. So it's writing to chords.html the HTML text that we've created in that little loop. We essentially printed out all of those files, added those to HTML and printed out into an HTML file. And then, once that's done, we browse that file. That opens up the default browser, internet browser, and shows that printed out text file. That lets us print as many chord diagrams that we've created to a single HTML file, and then show it, and then print it from the browser if we'd like. It's a very common way of printing information in Rebol. Nice cross-platform way of dealing with any information that needs to be printed out and nicely arranged or displayed. Also lets you print information directly from a Rebol program, for example, upload it to a web server. It's also going to be commonly used when you're dealing with CGI programs. Okay, now in addition to the we've closed up the GUI block here, but now we're going to add some to that GUI block. 50 times we're going to loop this code. We're going to append to the GUI, at a specific spot in the GUI at the pixel position 275 by 50, an image of the dot. That was one of the initial little graphics that we read in. And we're going to do that again 50 times with the field move style. So that's going to be a movable dot. We put 50 of them there, and we also put 50 of these dots that are a little smaller, and another 50 of them that are even smaller. All these are movable. And what they're doing, they're little stacks of dots that are movable that we're going to move on to the fretboard diagram, and that's how we're going to create diagrams, fretboard diagrams that are usable. Again, we're going to add a couple other things. We're going to put 6 little X's that can be placed above the strings, and we're going to place 6 little O's. These are all lined up at different positions in the GUI, and they're all movable because they have that field move style code. So now we've got a GUI that contained all, or a GUI block that contained all of the stuff we had above, plus all of this code. If we were to show that code, you'd see it's got an enormous amount of code in it now. Now we do a view layout, and view that GUI, and see what we get. Copy it all, paste it into Rebol, and you get a program that is actually really useful if you're a guitarist. And looks like this. Here's our fretboard diagram that was saved. It's actually now in the much larger size, 255 by 300. So you can resize this, and the bar gets sized proportionately. We can slide that bar around if we want to create a bar chord. And here's our stack of 50 little dots that we can use. We want to, for example, use one for root notes and another for any other type of notes. It's easy to do it. We can move open string notations and X's around, for example. And if we want to save that diagram, save it. It's by default number 1. Let's save it as number 2. Now that's saved to the hard drive. And again, the print button now lets us select a couple of these diagrams. And what it does is it prints it to an HTML file. And you can see there's a blank one here, and here's the diagram that we just created. And it's been browsed. And we can save as many more of those as we want. And with a minor chord here, I'll drag this off. Save that diagram as, say, number 3. And we'll go to print it. We can select all 3 now of those diagrams that we've got on the fretboard. And when we run the browser now, there are 3 chords. And we can save that HTML, chords.html, upload it to a web server, print out this diagram directly, whatever you want to do with that. You can do full sheets of bar chords or of any sorts of chord diagrams very quickly and easily like this, just by dragging the dots around, saving the files, and then printing it to HTML.